All right, do we want to start? Okay, great. So hi everybody and welcome to our third session today. Hello Marina, it's nice to see your face. With Ale Duarte, I'm really excited to have him here with us today. Ale is a teacher, advisor, and somatic therapist. His practice aids children traumatized by natural disasters, assists educators, therapists, and parents dealing with behavioral issues, and removes energetic hurdles experienced by high-performing athletes, entertainers, and executives. Ale, thank you so much for joining us today. I think the topic that, yeah, go ahead, please.
I'm so happy for the invitation, for being here to share. Usually I hide myself a little bit, so thanks for taking me out of my cave.
I pulled him out, everybody. I yanked him out and I said, come on, you have something really important to share with us, which I really do believe you do. And this is why I'm so excited for him to be here today. So I think Ale has a perspective on trauma in the nervous system of children that is going to be really helpful for all of us to understand. And in particular, working in the aftermath of natural disasters, but I have a feeling there's a lot we can glean, even if we're not speaking about the direct aftermath of a natural disaster. There's a lot we can understand about what's happening in the nervous system of a child in trauma. Yeah?
Yes, exactly. I will bring like a structure how to see children, especially after disaster, after stressful event, because nowadays we have so many situations that, you know, for children it's like a disaster, even if something that's very small. But I could understand by going to those areas that I'd like to share a little bit later. It's very similar. The mechanics is very similar to what we encounter in our office or in the school. So I would come from those areas. And especially in the beginning, when I was going there, I thought, "Wow, this is something like so out of my league," I would say. But of course, as soon as you go back to our home and we go to our office, and then you see a child or a family start to cry for something that sounds like smaller, you know, the pain, the perception of the pain can be the same for that person in that moment, in that. So I really learned how to respect a lot any kind of pain, because that's for that moment is relevant and it can be so trigger for the nervous system as if they're something very big.
Yeah, thank you. That's an important comment to make, exactly, because there's trauma happening in our nervous systems, even if we're not in a natural disaster area. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to how it might be different for children, how trauma might be impacting them. I guess in many ways, children can be more vulnerable to trauma. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how events impact them, and what are the things we're looking for in a child's experience.
Yes, I will show some slides here for you guys just in a minute. But you know, child is very susceptible to trauma, but at the same time, they have a very interesting mechanism of recovering, and especially because they love to play. You know, like children love to play. And that's their court to self-regulate. So they do have this kind of intelligence when they play that makes everything relative, and exposing the nervous system to a situation that's threatening but playful, that they kind of get the antibodies, I would say, while they're playing, and then they recover. So I experienced some situations there. For example, one of the things that I was revealing for me was one day in an earthquake in China. We were there with our groups. We're a group and teaching them how to cope with how to organize themselves in that school if earthquake happens. And you know how nature is. We're there in the courtyard, finish the work, stop right in the center. And suddenly I start to see this earthquaking coming from one direction. And that immediately became like a shaking in the floor. We were in the middle of earthquake. So I was there to teach how to cope with that. And then the earthquake happened very strong. I could see all children running away immediately. As soon as the earthquake stopped, they returned to the center and they start resume what they're playing before. So they start immediately get the rope, they start to jump ropes and hug their friends. And I thought, wow, that's remarkable. By observing that, I could see that probably 80% immediately resumed to play something. And the other 20, this is it's not a real number, but it's more or less of that, the majority. So these small groups either were crashing, shutting down, crying, trembling, and the others get hyper and start to be a little bit violent and yelling. And so there was a core group that could be in the resilience to recover. And the other two groups, those are the one we go specific to them to work with them. So let's suppose you are in your office, if you're a therapist, and then children comes to you, you bet that is part of one of these poles that goes there. If in school, is the one that trouble in the school, or if in the house, that's someone is trouble in the house. So it's the same. If we look at macro, it's exactly what happened. And we need to understand that not they only need a treatment, personal treatment, but they need to be connected with the center. And the center, the playful time there, that's going to create this massive resilience for them.
Yeah, so interesting. And you talk about this idea of emerging resilience patterns and being able to look for them. And so when you say this element of play is a big part of that, being able to,
yes,
to work with the play.
Yes. May I share a slide for you now, or?
Please, yeah, please take it.
And then I think it's going to be more graphic.
Sure, wonderful.
Let me do here. Just let me know if you guys are being able to see this.
Can everybody see? Can you give a thumbs up if you can see? Great, good.
So let me run through a few slides here.
And Ali, will there be any sound to this presentation or just images?
Just images.
Okay, good.
Here is one of my workshops, and we are teaching therapists and teachers how to work with kids. So we are having fun here. But let me see if I can make it. But when we go to disaster zones, we really need to teach them skills how to dive into their own experiences. So once we say, okay, we are looking for a self-regulation here in this situation, but they really need to learn the skills, not only to self-regulate by noticing but they need skills to know how to go in and how to go out, which is going to be our exercise at the end that I'm going to go back there. Here's Peter. You know, if some of you don't know him, my work is based on his work, the somatic experiencing. So I definitely learned so much with him, and a lot of things that I know and how to work with children, because before I was a teacher, so I taught some kindergarten. I have so much skills with playing with the groups. And then I met Peter. That was the therapeutic work, this one-on-one. So when he invited me to go to one of the disaster zone, I put both together, and I could see how all those kids, they really have skills to find through their play. They're able to self-regulate. They're all the time looking for places to self-regulate.
To self-regulate,
so this was
yeah.
in Thailand, yes. So this is in Thailand. When I by the time when I was invited by Peter to go there, so I was trying to find what could help those kids to work in groups. So I realized that, okay, what was the trigger? Was the big wave. So if it's the wave was the trigger, how can I recreate that wave in order to give them through play this small dosage of poison for the nervous system to react and be able to get out of their shutdown or to be able to come to reality. So we play with this parachute where we start to move and they start to have control of the parachute without know so much about that's the wave. But right after they will say, you know, after playing with this parachute, it kind of looks like to be in a wave. It's like the wave when the wave came. So I start to measure more the dosage of this exposure through play, through any kind of activity. And, you know, I think it's fantastic that if we do nothing, we just hold space, the children will tell how much they need and what they need through their play. Here's some of disaster, some of the settings that I work. This was my office for a while, and working those areas that has limited resources, but with people that wanting to recover. They really want to say, I want to get out of this stuff situation. So is every area they have one, it's like a different entity, different organization. So in India, you could see that the whole theme when I was there was grief. So we work a lot with grief. But in China, there was this heroic part that in China say, I want to recover. There was a lot of pride into that. So we kind of shifted the way we work with the community according with what we see there in the moment. And here's part of India working with so much grief there. And Thailand, he was in Syria, helping children to connect again with their body and find ways for them to say, okay, I am here right now. Because this is a situation, a stressful situation that's still happening. When a tsunami comes, it's like something came from somewhere, from the nature, from God. So they really, it's a different relationship when the situation comes from another human, a war, or is a human-made disaster. So you have much more frustration with that.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I heard once in, I think it was in the California training that I was attending, someone had said something about California fires and this experience that can happen when something happens in the environment, that you're betrayed in some way by the natural world. Is that something that you also encountered in your work?
Yes, very much. Another example was in Katrina, because it was a situation that happened with the rain, but it was the government didn't take care of things well. So the frustration was really high. So when you work in that situation, there's a lot of frustration to deal with. And that frustration comes from the adults to the children. And then we work with children there, is you got a similar pattern down there. Here was in Sri Lanka, and all those teenagers, they were warriors, they were fighters. They had to join by force. So someone said, okay, you need to be a warrior, a soldier. So that create this, in some ways, a bond. As soon as they finish, they escape, is a bond. They protect each other. That's another characteristic that happened there in those areas. So we have a group that's bonded together. We need to work with them as a whole and not separate them. And there was a shift working again, bringing this whole thing to a workshop, so to a training, to say, okay, it's not a tsunami every day. So there's other tsunamis, small tsunamis. So children needs that. They are now completely full of information and expectations from the parents, expectation from society, and looking ahead and say, I don't know what I'm going to study this here right now, but I don't know if it's going to be good for the future. This is something that they hold in themselves, is like I need to live right now because I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I don't even know if I'm going to be employed or not. So there is a different kind of stress happening every day. And working different ways right now, but basically is when I see a child right there in that moment with their conflict, whatever is that conflict. So when a child comes to my office and they stay there, they do have a problem, but I need to see where is the conflict that he have, what is inside their experience that they cannot overcome. What is the environment outside is showing that doesn't have a match. How can I find this bridge between the conflict, what they see with what they have, and putting both together? When we have that, they find their own solution for their own conflict. That's when the self-regulation happens. But they're going to meet another conflict right there. But at the same time, they will have another learning already happening inside themselves. They overcome one. Now they have something experienced before to go to the second and third, and then they build their regulation, they build their nervous system. So children really grow through their conflicts, everyday conflict.
I mean, this sounds like such an amazingly creative, I mean, I like this idea that you're really meeting the individual child and what's showing up in their nervous system. And it's a very creative way of engaging with them and then bringing in this element of play to help them to move through it and find regulation. And it's very interesting. And I'm wondering, a couple of thoughts that maybe some people are curious about is how you're trained to do this, but how might the adults in a child's life be able to do that if there's a lot of uncertainty themselves, how they would do that? And then also, what is the impact of the adult's unregulated system, when they're trying to help a child, but they are themselves not regulated, or they are also in the disaster area?
Yes. I can see that there is a great implication if the adult doesn't regulate themselves. If the adult, especially in disaster areas or in their house, if the adult doesn't they are not able to regulate themselves, children either will take the lead and they will be responsible, they will feel over responsible, they will take care of that family in some ways. Depends on the age of the children, but they would take step forward and they say, okay, I'm taking care of my mother right now, 10 years old, 9 years old. So there's this inversion of the situation. So we need to help in some ways the adults to come a little bit to their responsibility and the regulation of the nervous system, because sometimes they have other kids together. And in those situations, they lose more than one kid. So the one is facing the parents that lost 2 or 3 kids, the siblings. So it's really hard situation. And you don't know how the dynamic is going to play here. But the adults, we need to help the adults to give the support for the children. And that's where we have this responsibility as a facilitator, as a therapist, to not judge and just say, look, let's see how that works for you here. Let me build because that's when we build that in a community, that's the base of the community. the whole community take care of each other. There is a replication of the same pattern. So how are you going here? It's okay?
Good. Yeah, great. I was going to ask a follow-up question because I feel like it seems like if the regulated adult is able to be present with the child, that there would be an increased capacity or ability for more of a creative response to the child's dysregulated state, you know, the child's upset. Like, I know that I have more access to a more playful, creative engagement when I'm more regulated. So in the face of a fear my child might have, I'm able to respond in a way that can help maybe draw that out of them, which would make it seem like really like such an important, I mean, can imagine that's what you're really bringing a lot of into these situations. And maybe just as a comment to people watching, that there's a lot we can do, right, as adults to facilitate what you were calling these patterns of resilience or emergent patterns of resilience in the child, which feel like they would naturally unfold in that safe container. Is that fair to say?
Yes, is very much is fair to say that, and I will also include that be able to see a pattern or be able to see what happened in the situation requires an understanding of a larger situation, what they're looking at. And I you know, sometimes I want to use my therapeutic skills in the family, but I end up using my my teaching skills. I need to teach them something about the nervous system that can be so relieving for them. So, for example, if I would go to areas that is a problem, or even in institutions, they do see their child as a problem, or the child has a problem, and that triggers a fear in parents. But as soon as I start to point things for them and say, look, you see what they happen here? This is at a high energy here, and this is going to roll a little bit and then going to go low energy. So just take a little moment and just observe. Means I'm teaching them how the pattern is unfolding, which I'm going to do here right now a little bit. And just for them to see is like a, wow, such a relief, because I thought he had a problem. So in that one teaching, you have the parent to not stress and thinking like, oh my God, this is a situation that I don't know what it is. I am incapable of doing anything here. So they start to see, they start to say, oh, now I have a skill. I just need to wait a little bit to make the intervention later. And for the children, is like, I say, okay, you see, he told me that. I asked you to wait a little bit. And that makes the whole system more organized. But that is the first step, is how to teach them how to see what it is and how to teach what not it is. Because not everything is related to something that they're imagining.
Yeah, thank you, Ale. That's very interesting for sure. Yeah, helping parents even recognize that and looking beyond behavior as well, like this focus on bad behavior, right? That somehow there's something wrong with the child, or they're just being bad, or they're just being stubborn, or they're just, and helping bring in more of a sense of an understanding of what's happening physiologically or psychophysiologically beyond that.
I'd like to show here something more graphic. Let me pull here this slide here. Let me see this one here. Yeah, let's get how to see, you know, how to help a child after a stressful event. So things that parents need to know is we'll have a sudden shift. So in one point before the event, you know, the kid was, you know, what they know about the kids. But as soon as happen an event, they will have different behavior. And I came across many parents that they really don't accept so much the shift. For example, they were more calm, and then Later, they are more, they're fighting or became like sadistic or doing something that they're not used to do, using cursing others, for example. But they see this as, okay, the kids became something bad, but it's not. It's the reaction of the nervous system. And when we say, parents, look, now he's going to shift. We need to take care of this shift. Parents say, whoa, yeah, okay, let's continue that. The other thing is, I think that's another part that's important, is how to help them to make sense of reality that's happening. One day they have all the houses there. One day they have their toys there. One day they have their parents there or siblings. The other day is not there anymore. And they were not active agents to make that happen. So there's something happened. So how to make sense of this reality in that moment? So I see this is a great, it's a big deal, especially, for example, happened in Australia. There is a lot of fire happening there. And how now to explain a child that says, look, what happened? How can you help me to make sense of this thing? Before I look at outside, it was okay. And now I say, okay, it was the fire. But where does the fire come from? So, and then we got to get into what I think is part of the polarization of our society right now. One might say, okay, is not related with that was a big debate or global warming, and the other one say yes, global warming. But the child is in the middle thinking like, what's it about? So we need to bring a sense of reality and say, look, what's congruent in your experience right now? You are sad about the loss. So not only rationalize, but go to the level of their heart and see how we can help this kid to feel the loss, to feel the grief. And maybe say, okay, maybe I cannot explain to you this right now. Instead of advocate for one side to another side and not meeting their heart, what they lost there. Let them play is another situation that happened. Karine, I see many places that as soon as a tragedy happened, a loss, a child start to play and a family says, you know, you're not taking serious what happened. They ask them to stop playing, or they feel awkward to be in a place that they cannot play. But that's very instinctive pattern, instinctive force that says, hey, little guy, just self-regulate here by playing. So there are communities, there are cultures that they say something said happen, whatever things that is around happiness, you cannot do it. But that's, you create a confusion in kids because they start to feel guilt about feeling desire to play, feeling desire to run a little bit. Let them play, because that's going to be the court for them to self-regulate. And then understand the timeline of event. I don't want to bring so much information here, but I think that part of the timeline, I need a little bit time to explain that later, because that will give idea of when to approach a child. Not only what to do, how to do it, but it's when. When is is a gold that make our work so precise when you say, okay, this is not the right time to do anything. Even if it's the best technique in the world, I need to wait because there's a phase that's happening here. Is that clear so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Please interrupt me here because it can be...
Well, I
So
think we'll
passionate
have,
about
I
this.
think we'll have questions, right, guys? I think we'll have questions for sure later, but great information, says Anne. Yeah, I think it's really helpful. And then we'll definitely open up to some questions later. Thank you, Ale. And oh,
Yes,
someone's
please.
asking, can they have a copy of these slides? Can we share these with people?
Yeah, let me
Ale?
think about it. I
Sure,
will find a way to send it to you
sure,
and do a little bit tweaks here, but it'll be good.
sure. Okay, perfect.
Mm, okay. Things that I explain to parents. The way I explain to parents to give them the idea of, oh, this is what happened. So it's me bringing the reality to them. So the kids in conflict, and whatever happened in this event or something that happened, some kids goes over this line of balance and get stuck here. So they became aggressive, they became like agitated. So that's the shift that I was telling you guys before, that sometimes parent doesn't understand why they're like this, because they always been nice. We need to help them to understand that these are conditions or behavior that happen because the nervous system is so activated and doesn't know how to go down. It goes high, get into stress, and get stuck in stress. And then the behavior happen. Yeah. Or the opposite, goes down here and stay in this place of, well, I have no power. I give up here. Again, parents might say he was so active, but after that event, he became so depressed. We need to help them to go up here. But it doesn't mean that all kids would do that, because some will get up here, but they would know how to go back here and get into this resilience area. So we need to look and see which children come up and down by themselves and say, okay, this guy is doing his job by themselves. So I just need to hold space. Oh, but this guy here, he cannot do by themselves. The more he does that, the friends doesn't like to be with him anymore. People start to get afraid, parents get afraid. So he needs my presence here. And then we need to find ways to help them to go and self-regulate. And usually somatic practice, things that I would not be able to teach here right now, by bringing the sensations back, they're connected with the sensations, will help them to go down to this resilience mode. I was talking about play and how much children's the behavior they have, is part of the event that frightened them. Children will reenact exactly what was happened with them. I remember seeing one client there in São Paulo when I was living in São Paulo, and some robbers broke into the houses, in their house, and the kid was upstairs. They didn't see anything, but after that event, this kid that was very calm started to be aggressive and want just to play with the swords and hit others. So as soon as I told them, okay, do not reprimand that behavior, let's be around this behavior and let them discharge what's happened. Let's reenact in a way that's safe for them to self-regulate, and then he stopped to do this, unwanted behavior there. And this is what happened because we see what they're doing through the lens of the body try to self-regulate instead of this guy's a bad guy. Or here we see this little girl here that was in working with them in China. So there's parts of the event when something happened with the event, a time in the event that there is a shutdown in the system, means that this kid start to get so losing their power. That's what we see, losing their power, getting so weak, having bellyache, is because a cycle didn't complete and she didn't have time or skills or any choice to go and complete a cycle. So the body is flooded with those sensations, this being this parasympathetic mode or shutdown mode. And let me skip this one here.
Ali, could I ask you a quick question?
Yes, please.
About you were saying that, you know, allowing kids to play through like the safe reenactment of an event can be very helpful and discharging. And I'm wondering, when you know the difference between the sort of safe play reenactment versus when a behavior is in this kind of more activated, needs help to settle down state, what are you looking for there that could help parents distinguish between those? Does that make sense? So let's say two kids are play fighting.
Yes.
When is it, when do they need help, and when do we just allow them the space?
I think if the parents, you know your child and you know that how they play, usually how they play. If it's a new child for you, never saw you in your office, and then you need to be more careful. But if you see they're going over a little bit, say, wow, this is a little bit beyond. You feel that. Say, well, this is a little beyond, it's a little bit stronger. So it's important to intervene by saying, hey, wait a little bit. Just pause here. Let's think what's happening here. And then allow them to feel, say, just a moment. Just before you do something, they might say, oh, it's his fault. It's not fault. Listen to that and wait for this whole energy to, this anger or frustration to go down by listening to them, but not defending the other part. Because if you defend the other part, even though the other part is right, you create more problem. It's good to have time apart to reflect about both sides. And then you say, okay, if you're gonna continue to play this way, or let's change this game, let's do it in a different way. So we kind of contain the escalation of the process. Is that clear?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think so. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And absolutely, let me do it here. It is important to see when things start to escalate. We see in the behavior something start to escalate, we jump in without judgment, without taking parts. Because if you take parts, and that's what's going to be problematic. So very quick here to say is we need to be congruent with what happened outside and with inside. Is a disaster happened and they say, wow, now I lose everything here. You say, no, it's not, it's fine. That's not congruent to what they see. You might say, yes, I think you're experiencing something, a big loss for yourself. Yes. And then we kind of filter that information to not over-explain too much for them because they're already stressed. They're not understanding. The more they explain, the less they got. And we receive their emotions and worries. And I think another part is in those stressful events is we as adults, don't try to be tough, or we don't feel, because they will feel like, oh, something is not quite right here. I feel so much pain and my mother doesn't feel that. So am I weak? Whatever they comes with their justification. But as soon as it's very magical, it's simple. As soon as they find a match with their emotion, they say, yes, I think I can open myself here. It became easier for them to hold their emotions if the adult is able to hold their emotions and their wounds, you know?
Yeah, so that feels so important.
And develop a constructive mindset. Something terrible happened. And if we add a mindset that is, oh my God, a victim mindset, children will get that. And then it happened what I say, they might take the lead. And that's, in the long term, that's so hard on the children. I know probably some of you and had this experience already of being super, let them play, and super responsible for your parents. I don't know if some of you have that.
Yes.
Quick break here, Karini. I like
Sure.
to show a timeline of an event here, but I want to just make sure that I'm not going too fast or too slow here. Could you just check if everything is all right so far?
Yeah, we see the screen, emotional response with a kind of a graph, looks like some kind of graph here.
People are saying perfect.
Okay.
We can see it well, yeah.
Okay. All right, here's a graphic, emotional response here. So this is when we have a lot of emotions shifting in a high energy. And first, before the event happened, because we don't know it's going to happen, but before event happened, we have this idea, or the community, they have this idea of, okay, I'm immortal. Nothing's going to happen with me. If a tsunami come here, I know how to swim. There's no problem for me. So we see adults and parents and children saying, you know, there's nothing about climate change, nothing to worry about because we are invincible. And then we have the other side, in the same community, in the same household, kids, they say, you know, I'm so fearful about my future. How can we say that? This is the first polarity that happens inside their house with the information, conflict of informations there. So this big conflict here, as this is before, as soon as that happened, an event, it kind of shakes both into reality. It's like, wow, now that happens. That thing happened, you know, I lost my job. Oh my God, I thought it was invincible. And then a sequence of situations in the nervous system happened. They got shock about the event, go to this denial, a disorientation, try to say, well, no, this is not happening. And because they start to see come this heroic movement in the community, because they need to rescue, things are happening there. They need to rescue their parents, or they need to rescue their dog or their house. And here's what the specialists call the rescue phase. There's a phase in the disaster that is all about rescuing until you reach this peak of emotional, where is they call, the specialists call the honeymoon phase, where the optimism, altruism, gratitude is there. So, you know, one helping each other, and then you can see from each other, it's like, now we are a new family. So I lost my family, but we are together here. I'm so glad to be alive. So the body experience this kind of hyper excitement that is like a wow, it looks fantastic, you know, in some ways. For others, like a wow, this is not good. But as soon as reality start to come, especially in this area, because here's the press is there, they have organizations coming to bring things and gift, and the whole world is there. They're in the news. There's a moment they start to be fatigued. The bodies feel fatigue of holding that, because now the realization of something is happening right there in the moment. The stress of saying, okay, the resources are limited. One is start to blame other. Like, for example, in some places they are waiting for insurance companies to pay. Insurance company will not pay anything until they want. So they start to blame each other, and the community start to blame each other. So it's completely different from this area, this up here, the sensation. Now the nervous system start to go down to a lane of rage, violence, sadness, and grief. A sequence of downhill. So the body experiences this downhill of emotion. And here is probably like 3 months after the event, for example. And then that's what they call disillusion phase, until they realize that here, no press go anymore. There's nobody helping. The money is short. There's no water, and nobody cares more about it, especially the government. And they go to this phase of being accepting, integrating what they call the recover and reconstruction. So we have a timeline here that is the anatomy that's happened in a timeline. So that's why it's so important to understand when to help, when to talk to your child, because they will go through the same process. And we need to understand this macro to not say, oh, he's good. My child's good. He's so courageous. And then he embodied that identity of being courageous. But this is just momentary. Parents must know that that moment is a moment that happens with a lot of people, and he will feel the downside. And here is where everybody turns their back away. And this is a place that I see that we as a therapist, this is the area for us to come and help them in the disaster areas, for example. Not here so much, but more here, because this is where they're going to be by themselves. So let me see here where I am here. Okay. So I bring here a few pictures just to show this progression that happened here. Especially those kids are being a little bit violent here or playing in the household. You must bet, because this is already in this area here. We need to see that, say, okay, he's not a bad guy. It's just a moment this right now. And he lost something. And then he's gonna be in very down spirit energy. We need to help them by bringing them up here, doing the therapy or engage them with the community. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow. Another pause here.
Sure. You want to do a breakout? Can I, before we do that, I just have a quick question. Yes. And maybe, I don't know if you want to answer this now or later, you can let me know. But it's very interesting. A lot of the things that you're saying, I can see a lot of it hinges on our capacity to provide these things for them. First of all, this idea of congruence, I think, is very interesting, both for the aftermath of an event, but also as you were talking about the possibility of things happening. So, that let's say in areas where I have a friend, I think, who's still on the call, where there are increasing school shootings. Now, it's not a natural disaster, but it's an event that's happening, and it's happening at increasing rates. It's happening more frequently. So the reality exists, the possibility exists. And it's kind of like, you're not living in this invincibility, but you don't want to live in this fearful state all the time too. So how can you be congruent, confirm that the reality is possible, and give them tools to possibly meet the potential threat when it happens in a playful way, without instilling this overwhelming fear of the possibility or confirming their overwhelming fear of the possibility. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. And this is the area where the dialogue must not die. The dialogue must be inclusive. For example, when you have teenagers that is saying, okay, there's no problem, it's okay, the other side doesn't know anything. They're really playing something about their the algorithm of their Facebook, that only people that speaks the same thing as I think as stay here, the group stay here. But once we as adults start to say, okay, we don't know if the event is going to happen, that's for sure, but I'd like to hear your worries. And I'd like to hear also where's your strength? Why do you think that your strength is enough if an event will come happen? So when we start engage children in a conversation, it brings something come closer. It's open a dialogue instead of creating the distance, because the problem is the distance. Because we truly, let me ask everybody, how do you know what are you going to do if something catastrophic happen? And you mentioned the shootings, and this is something that's happening more. I was working in one place that has this also shooting. There was like they killed 14 people, 14 kids. So I worked with the mothers for a year, the whole community for a year, the mothers that lost their kids. And nobody knew where that kid came, what triggers on that kid to do that kind of thing. Because he was quiet, he was there, he was obedient, but those are not attributes to say, it's not enough information to understand. We need to see is like have I heard this guy? How many times? How, when this guy sat with me and talk about his difficulties? And was he worried about something? What kind of worry he has? Those are things need to be asked in those situations. And that's why to prevent that, we need to bring together the community to be able to talk about it. And once one of these kids that's very quiet or hidden in a group says, you know, I don't like you. It's good. You say something, please tell me why, what happened. I received that. So that makes the nervous system it's safe for me to say something here, because this person, Ale, or another person was there, he holds the environment and he holds the space for me. Make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I'm just curious about how a child how you might talk to adults about how they could help. Also, there was a video clip of you, Ale, working with some children. I believe it was in Japan. Was it the aftermath of an earthquake? And you worked with this game, this werewolf game, where you were pretending that there was a village at night, or there was a village at night, and there was a wolf coming at night, and you were giving the kids this beautiful game. You were giving them the sense of agency by saying things like, so where are you going to go when the wolf comes? Where will you hide? Where will you run? And it was such a beautiful illustration of how, in a very playful way, they can enact their fight or their flight, in this case, probably responses, and have that embodied sense of agency to react. And I wonder if you could just say something about that, because I thought that was such an interesting way of using play in a situation like that.
Yes, I think that's it's a good point. Thanks, Karina, for bringing this in here. Most of the games that children play, they do have a hidden skills. We need to see the play as a hidden skills, as a source of skills. For example, the wolf come at midnight. So when we play the wolf at midnight, it's not to entertain, but to give them a possibility to say, okay, the wolf come at midnight. What time is it right now? It's 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock. So he knows that it's not midnight. He doesn't need to, he has a time. And then he creates time, and then start to look at choices and say, well, if I run to that direction here. So those are metaphor. Those a metaphor for them to cope, to use the same structure when they are adult. They say, well, the stock market happened this way here. What's my choice? I don't need to jump into conclusion right now. I need to wait a little bit. So those games, they have hidden skills that they're a structure of how we think today as an adult. For example, another game that's overlooked and I use a lot. Sometimes people pay for the workshop. They say, Ale, come on, you're charging for this. Is hide and seek. With a very simple peekaboo hide and seek. And I think people that already had my workshop here know that it's fantastic how much you can do, because the hide and seek, you take them to the inner world or show them their incapacity of going to the inner world. So as soon as you start to play with that a little bit, I'm going to talk about even kids with 10 years old, huh? It's not, I'm talking about the toddler or any only little ones. But as soon as they start to have time to hide, they have time to process. The hide is like I am here by myself. Nobody can catch me here. If nobody can catch me here, I am invincible. He starts to get in contact with his own strength. And that's what makes them stronger when they come out and say, hey, I'm here. And this is a big preparation for that area here, the area in this part here. So there are many, many other games. If you get one of the books of games, go to Amazon and you're gonna see where's the hidden skills inside this game.
So cool. That's I'm excited to try that. To look, I'm gonna look at games in a whole new way. The hidden skills behind the games. That is really interesting.
Yes.
Really interesting.
Yes, and we need the skills.
Yeah, I'm so aware of the time. I would love to keep you longer, but I'm wondering what you'd like to do now, Ale. Would you, I don't know if you'd like to maybe skip the breakout, or if you want to incorporate a few minutes of it, or if you'd like to, you want to do a breakout for a short time?
Not necessarily.
Or do you want to go in, do you want to do some questions? I think people might have some questions for you.
Yes, and I do have an exercise if we have time here.
Does everybody want an exercise? I would love an exercise. Yeah, we're getting thumbs up. So maybe, what do you say? Do you want to do an exercise first, Ale, and then would you have time for a few questions?
I'd like, yes, I can have both. If time is a problem, you choose one. I can do more than 1 hour, maybe 10 minutes more or something.
Yeah,
it's okay.
That's fine. 10 minutes more. Is that okay for everybody? And if you have to leave early, you don't have to stay. So just so you know, but I would love, yes, we're getting yeses. Good.
So let's go straight for the exercise here. Too much information in the mind. Let's go to the inner world. So first is ask permission for you guys to lead you to this experience. And if you say yes, just shake your hand just for me to see. It's okay. Very simple. So I'd like you to get your hands, and you're gonna put your hands, find a place to sit well. And you find the hands here, put your hands like this, like you're, in some ways, you're holding in around your eyes. Yes. Find a very comfortable place. Yeah. So we can look at each other here. Taking a little moment. Notice your experiences, your mind is probably thinking so much. Just acknowledge that. With your eyes, you're gonna bring your eyes a little bit down. You don't need to close your eyes. As you go down, what you're gonna do, you start to close your hands, like make a little cave around your eyes, just a little bit. See if you still can see me here. You don't need to go to the fully inner world. Until I get this grid with my fingers. You know, when kids start to play, they hide behind their hands. They imagine that nobody can see them. So right there, take a moment and just rest a little bit behind your eyes, behind your hands. And observe how much your mind is working right now. Little by little, you're gonna open your eyes. You're gonna make a attempt just opening through this crack, like you can see through the cracks. And go back inside again, close again. As if you're going a little bit down. And notice the difference between this first dive and this second dive. And again, now you're gonna open a little bit. No rush, no rush. No rush. Wow. As you start to open a little bit, see if it comes like a tingling or something. And as if you start to go outside again, but not fully. Yes. That's perfect, Paul. Yes. Now, imagine you're gonna go outside even more. Like a kid come out of the peekaboo, like a slow motion, like, wow. Look around. See what happened in your body. And if you want, you can close a little bit and find your sweet spot. Where's your sweet spot? Where is it like so comfortable that you can stay here and nobody can bother you? Mine is around here. Yes. And slowly, it's like a getting out of water. Take your hands out of this energetic field. And notice what happened inside your body. If you still need your hand there, you just keep it, no worries. Yeah. And if you want, put the same process in your heart. You're gonna do this later, but you can keep your heart with this kind of grid, just like a protecting too. Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for the trust. Karini, with you.
Thank you. That was quite powerful for me. I don't know for anyone else. Yeah, I'm getting some nods here. I had this very visceral sense of being cocooned almost in like a shell, and then just coming out. I felt like full of wonder for the space I'm in, you know, for hours a day. It was suddenly like, oh wow. And it was really very potent. And I'm getting a lot of awareness, yeses in the comments. Yeah, it felt really protected. It was beautiful
Yes.
to see the variation in people's comfort and just note for them to notice where it felt good to stay, and honoring that was really beautiful. Yeah, vision clearer, calm. Someone said they can't wait to share this with parents. Energy in my hands was amazing. Yeah, some beautiful noticing. Thank you so much, Ali. That was very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, do that with the kid, and to restore this the capacity of being in and out. One of I think the last message here for you guys is one of the key thing for self-regulation. The key thing I see in a practical way, I'm very empirical, is the ability of going in and out. This is a big energetic shift. Simple, but so powerful. We can do so much with this inner and outer world. That's one of the key points of my work.
Thank you, Ali. Do you have time for a couple of questions before you go? Yeah, cool. Thank you
Yes.
so much. How do we want to do it, Mickey? Is there anybody who's raised their hand that would like to ask a question directly? Otherwise, we can go to questions in the chat box. So a couple of people have raised their hand.
A few hands raised, so I'm going to unmute Ali.
Ali, are you unmuted? Can you speak?
Hello, Ali?
Maybe,
Move
okay.
to that team.
We have Ale and Ali.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about with Ali.
Okay,
yeah. Am I unmuted?
Yeah, you are.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
All right. So it's not 100% related to disasters, but a friend of mine, son, has started to enact some sexual play with, he would hide and sort of enact sexual play with some of his friends to the point that it became a problem because it was done in a somewhat aggressive way, and there were some talks about maybe some sexual abuse on him or whatever. And it was never possible to draw that information out of him. And so I had sort of like two questions. One is because you talked about reenactment and how much when they reenact, it's a way for them to sort of, discharge the nervous system. And in this case, reenactment needed to be stopped, and how can that kind of reenactment can be facilitated for that discharge to happen. And the other aspect of it is that you didn't quite talk about how we can get information out of children to allow them to the space and time, or to sort of, I even almost want to say, trick them into finding the words or sort of expressing what might have happened or what is it that they're trying to process, which could be, in this case, sexual abuse, but it could be something else. There's just, there has been she tried to put him into contact with psychologists and whatnot, but he seems like he feels, as soon as he feels like someone is trying to get some information out of him, he's very smart, and he
Yes.
sort of snaps out of his comfort zone and comes back into manipulating the situation to not have to give any information. So that.
Baptiste, how old is he?
Well, right now I think he's about maybe 6 years old, and that started pretty young. I would say he started around 4. Is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 100% sure about that. I would have to ask, because I talked about that for a while back, but it brought me back to
yes.
Like that.
Yeah, thanks for the question, and it is very complex to answer that, but I have a picture of what is that, and I think these two questions has one answer, especially for this kid, is the foundation was not well placed, was not based, so he feels even if people has great intentions with him, he didn't encounter someone that could understand him fully energetically. So he still needs to do something hidden. He's still hiding to do something, or he feels the environment is not receiving what he wants to do, or he assumed that what he wants to do is not well received that. So first of all, and it's not independent if it's is any sort of, or if it's sexual, or if it's on a violence, or any kind of other types of trauma, children needs to understand there is a sense of intimacy. Means that I would reestablish to have a conversation with him that is a private channel. Like a mother and the child might say, the mother might say, oh, I know you might feel a little bit insecure right now, but nobody's gonna, you can tell me nobody's gonna do that. It's different than saying, okay, I think you, if I say out loud, I need to establish a channel that meets their energetic frequency. Once a child know that, oh, this person speaks exactly how I think I can trust to be together with them and with him and share, and then he's going to go to the next level and be able to open. Means that there are channels of communication with the child needs to be established, reconstruct, and those are energetic. If we look outside, it's something simple, but once we're there with children, he can feel it and say, here is a safe place. And this has happened so many sessions. They will tell you what is necessary to know in a different language, in a codified language. I think that's one of the mistakes of adults. They expect children will tell them literally what happened. Oh, that's what happened. The event was this and this and this. What they do is they might say to you, like sweet candy. You say, wow, where did this come from? The cloud is on the sky. You need to start to get these pieces of the puzzle putting together and say, oh, where do you feel this cloud of the sky? It's in my belly, in my chest. Go there in your chest and notice what happened. Yeah, it seems like there's a big storm inside. Big storm. Tell me more about the storm. And then he might talk about a little bit about the event. But we need to get into their felt sense through whatever they bring out. If it's a gesture, if it's a word, or a drawing, we need to ask. But this is not easy task. It's not something simple. It's a detective work. We work as a detective.
Thank you, Ali, so much. I'm very conscious of the time.
Yes.
Just so everyone knows, we did get some questions ahead of time, and I tried to weave them into the questions that I asked Ali during this session, but there will always, unfortunately, be these straggler questions that don't get answered. And it's a bummer. I wish we could have you for more time because I have so many more questions too, Ali. But maybe, is there one other thing that you would leave us with? And maybe, especially for those of us who aren't, who aren't trained, what is the most empowering thing we could do to help our kids?
I think first you understand that children need you. In a base like it needs you. It needs a support, but it doesn't need support as someone that is a top down. But he needs someone to hold them. And once we have that, the next step is just don't say anything. Just stay together. They will tell you. They will tell you. Don't step ahead of your children. And the other part, I think that's I'd like to tell that our adults is we need to get out of our sense of urgency, especially as a healer, therapist. We need to get out of a sense of urgency because that's what rushes children to not speak to you, especially the ones that are in time.
Oh, yeah. That's a very powerful point right there. I want to just take that in. We need to get out of our sense of urgency, and we are enacting that on ourselves too, right? We need to be different. We need to move faster. We need to get this fixed, and giving ourselves a space and time, giving our kids space and time. Thank you so much for that, Ali. That was beautiful, and I'm really so glad that you joined us here today. And and I hope to see you in one of your workshops soon here in Europe.
Yes, please come. Let's learn together.
Let's learn together, everybody.
Let's learn together.
Ali, and if you can, tell us where is the best place that people can find you, first of all, your website? Yes,
my website is aleduarte.com.
We'll make sure you have links.
Duarte. And there you're going to have more information. I am coming with new things for the coming year right now. moving a little bit more online. I'm being hidden by myself in my own cave. So I'm going a little bit like this right now. So take advantage of that and we can do things together. I would love to do things together with you guys.
Thank you, Ella. And if you could make send a version of your presentation, I know several people were
Yes.
interested in some of your graphics. If you could send that to us, we'll make sure people get a copy. Is that okay? Just maybe a few
Of course.
of the ones you spoke to. Great.
It'd
Thank you
be
so
a pleasure
much.
to have that. Thank you,
Great.
guys. Thank you very much.
Bye. See you.
Tchau. Beijos para todo
Ciao.
mundo. Tchau.
Beautiful. Ciao.
Thank you, guys.